Hey guys, this is Khavrion here with another battle report. This is for IGL Season 11, Round 4 America Edition. And it is going to be me as Steel Phalanx against Lobo as Starmada in a game of Frontline. Now, as I'm sitting here recording this, I just got back from Spain, where I was in Interplanetario, and I did really well. And I'm quite sure that many of you would be super interested in hearing how that went. But I got asked to do this video, and I want to do it before I forget too much. So, IGL battle report today. In the future, we'll talk about Interplanetario. The mission is going to be Frontline. Frontline is a zone control mission where the center of the board between the two deployment zones are split into 3 horizontal strips. At the end of the game, you want to dominate these 3 sectors, and you get more points depending on how far away the sectors are from you. So if you dominate the zone closest to you, that's 1 point. If you dominate the middle, that's worth 2. If you dominate the end, that's worth 3. That's obviously where the game is going to be decided. That's where a ton of the points are. And it's worth noting that this domination happens only at the end of the game. There's no intermediate scoring for the dominating of the sectors. So during the course of the game, you are mostly going to be trying to either kill your opponent or avoid being killed, while on top of that, trying to accomplish your 4 classifieds. 4 is a big number of classifieds. So if you get lucky and draw 4 classifieds that are easy for you to do, you can potentially get a whole lot of points that way as well. However, the classifieds are definitely a secondary consideration to the main point, which is trying to dominate the sectors. That done, let's talk about lists. When I signed up for this tournament, I very much had Interplanetario on the mind. So the lists that I submitted to this tournament would also be the lists that I would bring to Interplanetario. Consequently, I didn't really want to change things up too much. That being said, going into IGL 11 and going into thinking about Interplanetario, I had been playing a lot of the mid-rangers concept in vanilla Aleph. And one of the things that the mid-rangers concept brings is independent troopers that can take care of themselves. Highest on the list of troopers that can do that I hadn't been playing with before is Hippolyta. Hippolyta has always been yet another Myrmidon hero, but up until the rework, she had some really fatal flaws that made her kind of unplayable. Chief amongst which was she had to pay for NWI, but she did not have shock immunity, which meant that if she stumbles across a mine, you could just have her die and you're out about 40 points. With the rework, they made her 6-2 and they made her true 2 wounds, and that really catapulted her into the very playable status. So in vanilla Aleph, I had adored taking Hippolyta and having her run around, super jump around the field, throw eclipse to cover herself, kill things, and basically be a solo independent operator that could function without having to deal with the rest of the links in Steel Phalanx. The Steel Phalanx links are really good, but they're also kind of expensive, so you don't always want to drag them into the midfield and leave them there where they're at risk. Thus, for IGL 11, I wanted to experiment with taking Hippolyta. Of course, to do that, I had to drop someone, and I dropped Ajax. Ajax and Hippolyta are almost exactly the same points, so that was pretty easy to do. Hippolyta is actually 1 point more expensive, which means I had to downgrade Pandora, and that hurt a lot. Losing the medikits and Pulsar on Pandora hurts a lot. And losing Ajax hurts a lot too. I love Ajax. You can probably still find my Steel Phalanx review video where I basically gush about how cool Ajax is. But there really isn't anyone else to substitute for Hippolyta, and I wanted to run her. The other thing is that Ajax is hackable, and this list is designed to deal with those factions that can park a repeater in the midst of my fire teams. It's not great at dealing with that, but Ajax becomes yet another weakness because they can hit him with Oblivion, and that's that for him. With Hippolyta, yes, they can spotlight and kill her, but that takes a few more orders, hopefully, a few more chances for me to get lucky. And so for that goal, Hippolyta is another reasonable substitution. Otherwise, this really is just my normal list that I tend to run. It is a 2 Enomatarkos big boy adjacent list. Your first Enomatarkos is Hippolyta, Phoenix, Machaon, and this Myrmidon. Sorry, the list code isn't exactly grouped. And my second Enomatarkos is Pandora, Myrmidon Officer, Oiteros, and Akmon. You then have the missile launcher bot, in case you want that, a baggage bot for the orders, and then group 2 is basically just 3 flash pulses. The idea of this list is pretty straightforward. All the units go into their Onomatarkoses and form these elite compact teams that can do objectives and are very durable. You then have the Myrmidon Officer, Chain of Command, in case you need that in order to survive. And then Machaon's your Lieutenant because you have to have that too. My game plan going into Frontline is to go second and then to be as tough as I can be, as hard to shift as I can be. If I can keep enough of my guys alive, I can just move them into whatever zone I need to move them in and try to win that way. It is not the most interactive strategy by any stretch of the imagination, but it is the Steel Phalanx approach to a mission like Frontline. In contrast, here is Lobo's list. He is running Starmada. This is slightly different from what I was expecting, but honestly, the pieces are all pretty much there. Now, before the introduction of roadbots, I would have said that Starmada is pretty bad. They simply didn't have the fast attack or fast advance that a faction needs in order to actually be able to do anything. Like, yeah, the Zeta's good, yeah, their Link team is okay, but all of that is supporting what? It's supporting nothing, essentially, right? But then the roadbots and I guess also the Sarco appear, and that really helps them out a lot. The roadbots are 1 wound NWI, mimetic, high dodge, remote specialists, essentially. Lobo's taking the paramedic option. There are some other options, but he's chosen this one. And these dudes are exactly what you want if you want to rapidly advance up the field, get into your opponent's deployment zone, and start causing damage. People have likened them to baby Sujians, and I see that comparison really solidly. They also have a wide variety of profiles, but the one that Lobo has taken here is the Forward Observer, which brings a Wild Parrot, which just is fantastic. For those of you who don't know, the Wild Parrot is kind of like a Crazy Koala, except it's an EM mine. So instead of triggering on one dude in zone of control, it blasts an EM template out, and EM is just the best ammunition, unless you're up against bears. So Sarco, really good, and at 20 points, it's just incredibly cheap. That all taken care of, let's just go ahead and talk about the list. He has brought 2 Kappa Hackers, 2 Raven Eyes, and a Kappa Multi-Sniper. The first 4 profiles are excellent. The Kappa Hacker is, nothing to write home about except that it is a 12-point hacker, and Lobo is going to use this to his advantage when he has to guided missile strike things because he can coordinate and get a burst to spotlight. The Raven Eye is just busted good. Not only is it a lieutenant option that counts as a Kappa, so it's able to pure core, but it brings an Emerat and EM mines, and it has mine layers. So these guys are basically going to park in the deployment zone and make it so that if anyone gets close, they have a really, really high chance of getting isolated. EM ammunition, just absolutely phenomenal, except against bears, and so the Raven Eyes are just really stunning. I have played against Lobo in this core on multiple occasions, and frankly, I just kind of avoid it because there's no point in trying to get into the middle of it with all that EM. The only one that isn't busted good is the Kappa Multi-Sniper, which, it's a multi-sniper with BS-12 and a pure core. Perfectly serviceable, but if you're not excited about a Fusilier multi-sniper, you shouldn't be excited about a Kappa multi-sniper. It's the rest of the core that's exciting. This guy just fits into that core. Other than that, you have a missile launcher bot, a roadbot paramedic with side bot. The side bot having that heavy riot stopper is really nice. The Varangian to throw smoke, a road bot and forward observer bot duo in group 2. Remember that forward observer bots get tactical awareness in this season, so this set of guys is going to have a ton of orders. A war core, a Zeta with NCO. This is a hyper rapid magnetic cannon tag, but it also has climbing plus and NCO, so it's going to have a lot of orders and it's going to be able to climb all over everything. And having an HRMC, it can basically just hammer down pretty much any ARO that's up. HRMCs are disgustingly good. They are strictly better than multi-HMGs in every context, except I suppose if you manage to crit an ARO, where I guess multi-HMG has explosive ammo. But this is an absolutely phenomenal gun. No reason not to take it. You have the Cyber Ghost killer hacking device. I think he takes that one because it simply, doesn't cost any SWC. This guy can also go into marker state, and he has a pitcher. At 18 points, really good. Lambda Engineer and the Sarco Forward Observer. Lambda Engineer is just a normal-ass engineer, nothing special there. So yeah, this list is pretty much exactly what I was expecting Starmada to bring. The only surprise for me was to see the Roadbot with his Sidebot instead of seeing another duo with Roadbot and Oko. Now, initially, I actually had been thinking that the road bot with the Red Fury would be the one to show up, but if you look at the SWC count, at 6 SWC, there simply is no way to fit that guy in, so the road bot with the SMG is going to be the one to be brought. You could bring a road bot with a shock multi-marksman rifle or whatever that is, but that's only burst 3, it just doesn't shoot that well, and it's at -3 in close range, which can be a problem. So the paramedic choice makes perfect sense to me in retrospect, in hindsight, seeing all this. That out of the way, let's dive into the game. I don't remember exactly how the lieutenant role goes, but I will end up getting to choose deployment, and Lobo will decide to go first. He thinks for a while about whether he wants to go first or second, but in the end decides that going first is the right call. I think I agree with him. As a Steel Phalanx player, I have been feeling like I'm a little bit weak on the attack, and I'm feeling like my list wants some extra guns, but that's kind of a discussion for another time, and it's also a discussion that Lobo hasn't, had yet. He has been playing against a lot of vanilla Aleph. He has been playing against guys who are running Achilles, and Achilles is a really, really strong attacker. So he's thinking if he has to deploy first and then go second, that he's going to be vulnerable to that Achilles attack run or something like that. And, I'm inclined to agree with that assessment. So he goes first, and I have to deploy. Between the two deployment zones, I end up choosing this one. And the primary reason is that I am concerned that if Lobo gets to choose this side, he is going to put his climbing plus tag, on this building or on this building, and then just rake gunfire into my DZ, and that I'll have either nowhere to hide or nowhere to go to get out of that DZ. Secondarily, I'm also concerned about pitchers landing, and I want to keep my dudes a little bit safe. This building happens to be like a little bit longer than 8 inches. So if I can have Phoenix here and McKayon here, for example, then he's not going to be able to hit them with pitchers unless he comes in from that direction. So I don't love either of the two deployment zones, but this deployment zone is a little bit better for me because it tries to cut out a little bit of his advantage. So I then deploy. And what do I have? I have Hippolyta there, Myrmidon here, McKayon here. He's not going to get cover, but being prone, he's basically impossible to see, and he is as far away from the edge as possible, so guided missile won't hit him. Here is Phoenix. He was my withheld piece. We'll talk about him in a second. Myrmidon officer. This is my turret, Pandora, Oiteros, Akmon, Flashball spot, Warcore. There's another Flashball spot in there, missile launcher bot, and baggage bot over here. And the reason that Phoenix is here is because during this deployment, I actually made a mistake. That mistake is that the Myrmidon officer chain of command is within mutual pitcher range of McKayon over here. If my opponent lands a pitcher right here, for example, then he'll be able to guided missile this guy and then guided missile that way, and then I'll be in loss of the lieutenant. Phoenix being my withheld piece, I know where his Cyber Ghost is. It's going to be over there. So I need to put Phoenix here so that I can basically watch this lane, thereby preventing my opponent from, lobbing a pitcher up in this direction without seeing Phoenix first. I don't love having to put Phoenix there, but I have to do it because I've made this mistake with the chain of command guy and McKayon close together. Incidentally, this is not the first time that I've lost an important IGL game to this mistake. My game against Norfolkot, I did basically exactly the same thing, and he parked a repeater, guided missile strike McKayon, guided missile strike my chain of command, and that was that. So I need to not make this mistake in the future, but at least I realized it before deployment was over and could compensate with Phoenix a little. Meanwhile, here is my opponent's deployment. He has the Kappa multi-sniper. Notice that he has a lane over to where Phoenix is. He might have to move to find that lane, but he can get it. Missile launcher bot, Raven Eye. I think this is a Kappa hacker. I think this is another Raven Eye. I don't remember where the other Kappa hacker is, maybe right there. I think this is, I don't remember what that is. This is the road bot and side bot. This is the road bot. This is the Oko right there. This is the Lambda. This is the Zeta. This is his defensive turret. It's actually too far forward, but it won't matter. This is the Varangian. And then the Cyber Ghost ends up going, I think, over here or something like that. EM mine, and then here's the Sarko. So the reason that I don't like Phoenix being here is because my opponent can take his Kappa and shoot Phoenix straightaways. I'm going to be at bad range, so net -6. He's going to be in good range, but cover. I'm going to have Mimetism, but I'll have a pure core, so he's going to be net -3. And moreover, he's going to shoot me through this zone, so I'm going to be burst 1, he's going to be burst 2. That's not super duper dangerous, but it is a problem when my opponent has double action ammo that can kill Phoenix straight away if even one gets through. This isn't a huge risk. After all, I can just smoke dodge 2 dice on 17s while my opponent shoots me 2 dice on 9s, but it is a big enough risk that I am not thrilled about this position. Because I'm going to be throwing smoke, it is basically perfectly safe for my opponent to take this shot, and if he gets lucky, then Phoenix is going to die. And unfortunately for me, that is exactly what happens. The Kappa, I think, walks over to here in order to see Phoenix, shoots me through this zone, he crits, Phoenix fails 2 of the saves, and dies. That's a pretty significant loss for me, and I really didn't want to expose myself to this happening because I knew that it was a risk. But, you know, that deployment error with the Myrmidon officer and McKayon being too close together is what forced it to happen. What happens next? The Cyber Ghost, who is, I think, over here, basically runs out to this position. I don't remember exactly where he ends up, and throws a pitcher there. The Cyber Ghost then kills Pandora in one order. That was pretty unlucky. And then we spotlight and kill Oideros. I don't remember how many orders it takes, but he is super dead. And again, it's pretty darn efficient. When Lobo's turn ends, the situation looks something like this. You've got the Zeta over here, you've got the Roadbot and friends moved up to this position, and I am where I am. I am unfortunately pretty well bottled into my own deployment zone, and I don't have any long-range guns to fight back. I am not going to be able to get out of this deployment zone very efficiently, and I don't want to get stuck in the midfield, because if I do, I will die. Also, I am aware that getting off of this stupid building is going to take me a lot of orders. So I want to get my guys down. I want to kill this repeater if I can, and I want to form up a link team so that in the future I can move out. However, I want to do all this without exposing myself to unnecessary risk. So basically, I spend my first turn accomplishing very little. I take some long-range pot shots against this guy, doesn't do anything, and that's pretty much all I do. The only thing that I notice is that this engineer was actually standing up, not prone, and he is too close to the tag. So my missile launcher bot is able to come up, and he takes a pot shot on the engineer, but it doesn't work out. The engineer wins the face-to-face or something like that. Nobody takes any damage. So that didn't, amount to anything, but it was something that I tried. So yeah, at the end of my first turn, the situation basically looks like this. Hippolyta has gone to Oideros' position. She has some nice long-range AROs, which I like. McKayon has come to here to nearly Phoenix's position, and we've managed to reform the team. This is the chain of command guy. He is now far enough away from McKayon that I'm not as concerned, but also the Cyber Ghost. I think the Cyber Ghost failed one of his pitcher tosses, so I don't have to worry about that too much. Regular Myrmidon, Akmon, Flash Pulse Bot, Baggage Bot, Flash Pulse, Warcore, and Missile Bot. From this position, it is now Lobo's turn. The first thing he's going to do is he's going to try to take a Zeta over here to shoot as much as he can. He is largely unsuccessful in this endeavor. He only has burst 4 because of the saturation zone, and he's going to be lobbing shots into Hippolyta. At this point, I know what he's trying to do. He wants to take these guys and run them to attack, my stuff over here. So I don't want Hippolyta to throw Eclipse to cover herself too much. But at the same time, I can rely on my Mimetism -6 and my cover and my armor and his reduced burst to basically sit here and sandbag. And that's exactly what I do. I don't remember how many orders it takes, but the Zeta runs out of orders before accomplishing too much, and it is time to move these guys around. Now, as these guys are moving, they're basically going to have to go all the way up here, then they're going to have to climb on this building, and he wants to kill these guys. Throughout this process, they are going to be exposed to long-range AROs from Hippolyta at first, and McKayon afterwards. Sometimes it's going to be through saturation zones. Sometimes I'm going to be using Hippolyta's Flash Pulse because I don't want to be at too big of a penalty. But as we can see here, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for me to just be lobbing these dice at long range and low numbers, where he's shooting at me at long range on low numbers. Remember also that every order that he spends shooting me is an order that he spends not advancing as fast as he can. And so throughout this process, the forward observer bot and the other guy are going to just be taking a lot of long-range fire as they go all the way through here. What happens is that eventually, I think McKayon double crits on the forward observer bot and just kills it straight away. Then we manage to hit this guy and put a wound on it too. And At first, this seemed like it was pretty lucky, but actually the lucky part is that he never managed to forward observe me. In practical terms, there were just a gajillion orders of these guys trying to run all the way throughout here, and at any stage, they could have just gotten hit by these really low number combi rifles being shot at long range. At burst 2, even if I'm on like a 2 or a 3, eventually there's odds that are pretty good that I'll hit. Remember that I see, here, and because he can't go prone, Machaon actually sees as the thing is trying to climb up there. Another thing that does help me is that as these guys are trying to get up there, the Warcore and the Flash Pulse bot are fairly lucky in being able to dodge, so even once he gets there, he doesn't have a lot of luck killing them. They do die, it takes forever. So once my opponent's turn ends, the Zeta is here. The Warcore actually is still alive, it looks like. I think my Flash Pulse bot is unconscious, and the side bot is like hanging off the side of the wall up there. Incidentally, I'm really sad that Pandora is dead at this point, because had she been alive, I would have been able to isolate these bots as they're in repeater range, and that would have been super nice. Now, Pandora is as defensive as they come in terms of being a hacker, but that still just means that you die just like all the rest of the chumps when there's a repeater near you. There are no defensive hackers in the game that can actually survive a killer hacker. Like even the Interventor with BTS 9 probably dies eventually, and the Interventor being so expensive and often being your lieutenant in Tunguska, the killer hacker is happy to just hurl dice on it until it dies. That's just how it is, so I'm not too disappointed that Pandora died, but it is a little disappointing that she died as quickly as she did, because I would have loved to have her here. Anyway, that's sort of neither here nor there. Here's the situation when my opponent's turn ends. Notice also that this guy has advanced slightly. So it's then my turn. What am I going to try to do? What I'd like to do is get these guys out of the situation that they're in. I am aware that I want to get my guys into the zones in the future, and I want to have as many orders to do so. Akbon having tactical awareness is a step in that direction, so I want to, get these guys out of their bad situation. The Zeta's on ARO though, and I don't have that many orders in which to do all this stuff. Unfortunately, I fumble this a little bit. I think that Akbon's tactical awareness is going to be enough to justify getting him out, but it's not. I have to use Hippolyta to throw a lot of smoke, and then it takes multiple orders to get Akbon in range because of coherency issues, so that's not great, and I end up spending far too many orders. I do run up to this direction because I want to fight these guys, but by the time I get there, I'm really running low on orders. I shoot the road bot and fail to kill it. I think I shoot the side bot and fail to kill that too, and then I realize, okay, I got to back off. And when I do back off, I end in this position, and so, Myrmidon Officer, Hippolyta, Machaon, but you'll notice that Akbon is too far forward, so he's not even in the link anymore, which again just is gonna cost me, because him not being in the link means I don't get the advantage of the tactical awareness on my last turn. So I really fumbled this turn, and it was just because trying to move around this deployment zone was really, really rough. There's just so much arrow that this tag can see that I've got a problem. I was aware of that when I chose this deployment zone. I really did not like the deployment zone for purposes of trying to get out of it. There's just not really anywhere good to hide and not really anywhere good to get out. But, I couldn't let the climbing plus tag, get on this, what does Drake call it? Stripper pull of doom. I just couldn't let him have that, so I had to do it this way. My opponent's turn is pretty straightforward. He's going to take the tag up here to be on ARO. He's going to take his bot, which is over here, to try to, kill my Warcore and complete a classified, I think, on this thing. And then the bot is going to retreat to there, so it's in the zone. My missile launcher bot had been standing, so he takes his core, runs it up all the way over here, and uses the multi-sniper rifle to kill the missile launcher bot there. And then he basically wants to have as many dudes in the zones as possible. So he's got his core in, I think the middle, I don't remember exactly. He's got his tag and the road bot in my zone, and then the middle, or maybe his own zone has some of the core or something like that. So then it's my turn. At this point, I have, I think, 6 orders or something like that. But a bigger problem is that he's got a lot of arrow, and my links are just in awkward positions. Moreover, fighting my way out of my own deployment zone with my link is going to be really, really difficult. So what do I do? Well, the first thing is I need Machaon into my own zone. So I activate him. He is going to use smoke in order to contest this Zeta and move forward in this direction. That doesn't work. The Zeta wins the face-to-face, and he dies. Okay, that sucks. Next is Hippolyta and everybody else. They need to advance. Notice that the Myrmidon is standing so he can be seen by the Zeta. So he's going to try to advance. He's going to throw smoke there and there to, block things off in that regard. I don't exactly remember how it happens, but I think he also loses the face-to-face and dies as well. The even bigger deal with losing the Myrmidon is now I've also lost my Link and I'm out of command tokens. So Hippolyta is now going to be impetuous and she can't bring anyone else. So at this point, I know that I really don't have anything that I can do except, try to get Hippolyta into this zone because I think I'll outscore whatever. So I run Hippolyta up here. She is going to throw smoke over here and then she's going to stand on that building. That's the plan. Unfortunately, I think she misses smoke or something like that. And she's got to throw smoke as well, over here and over here. So it's going to take a lot of orders to do that. And while she does end up getting on the building, she has to provoke a bunch of unfortunate arrows in order to do so. I'm lucky in that as she does that in order to provoke those arrows, she doesn't die. But, at that point, Lobo had already had the game. So, it's not that big of a deal. So at the end, what happened is that Hippolyta is on this building and we determined that I scored this zone. We're actually wrong about me scoring that zone. We realized later that his whole core was in that zone, but at the time, at the end of the game, we had thought that Hippolyta was there, but he has the middle and he has this zone. So that's how it ends. I had been hoping to accomplish a bunch of classifieds over here too. I had to coup de grace something and I had to get net undermined. So I had some decent classifieds that I could have done, just no orders to do it though. And that was that. To give a high level assessment, I think the game was decided on, maybe 2 or 3 things. First things first, my opponent definitely got lucky to kill Phoenix right away, but I knew that putting him there was exposing him to risk and I had to do it because of my own mistake. I think my opponent also got lucky with the efficiency with which he was able to kill Pandora and Oiteros. Those 2 guys probably should have died, but it should have taken a little bit longer. And the fact that it was done so fast means that he was able to get it all done on turn 1. The second thing, though, that the game was decided by is that Lobo really knows how to play against Steel Phalanx. My Steel Phalanx especially, but Steel Phalanx in general. And what you have to do is you have to refuse contact. You have to stay as far away from Steel Phalanx as you can, and you have to force Steel Phalanx to throw a lot of smoke in order to get there. If you do that, then Steel Phalanx will have fewer orders once it gets close, and Steel Phalanx will have, potentially expensive links that are caught out in the midfield. Remember on my turn 2 where I formed up a link, took a bunch of orders, ran up here, did nothing, then ran back. I had to spend a lot of orders throwing smoke, and I had to spend orders running away because if I had ended up with everybody up here, then, the road bot or something like that would have really eaten me alive. Even all that said, I think I actually played quite well and that I did have a strategy for winning. I think on my last turn, had Machaon not died and had this Myrmidon not died, then I would really have had a pretty compelling case to move my guys into this zone, to move guys then into the middle, to take that away from Lobo and maybe score some classifieds. And if I had done that, then I think I would have been successful. With Machaon dead and this Myrmidon dead, I simply did not have the points in order to take my own zone back, but so, it really did come down to that luck aspect at the end. Obviously, the fact that Lobo put his tag where he could see Machaon is why he was able to throw those things and get that chance to get lucky. So, there is play here. It wasn't just that I got unlucky, but I still was in the game up till the last turn. It came down to those dice in a lot of ways. Anyway, that's pretty much how it went. I had a lot of fun playing against Lobo. He's a really good player, and I do not mind getting beaten by him. And it was also really good practice for Interplanetario because the more reps you can get against really excellent players, the better off you're going to be. So hopefully you are slightly better off having watched this battle report. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you around.